Bishop, could you share your meaning of reconciliation? How do you see yourself being able to bring that healing and reconciliation to the Diocese of Wyoming, particularly how you will bring your spiritual approach?
Thank you, Brian. The um, the word reconciliation and the concept of reconciliation is at the very heart of Christian ministry. It's if you go to the outline of the faith in the Book of Common Prayer, the Catechism, you'll see words about reconciliation. You see it peppered throughout the liturgies. We even have a liturgy, a sacrament, the reconciliation of a penitent, more colloquially known as confession. Um, Reconciliation is a mashup, really, of multiple concepts and multiple words. Re means again, and conciliation means together. So it's to bring things together again. It's about those things which were separated, having the separation, uh, the gap between them being closed so that they're once again in relationship with one another. So reconciliation is about healing. It's about relationships. It's about finding something again that was one that has been lost. It's about coming together as people and as community and listening to one another and openly wrestling with what it is that has separated you so that you can close those gaps. It's what we're called to do with God, to be reconciled to ourselves, to one another, and to God. Another way of looking at it is to say that we're all beset by sin, sin as separation. And reconciliation is that process, and those acts are bringing things back together again. The reconciliation and healing have been an active part of my ministry for many, many years. When I was called to be the rector of St. Francis Episcopal Church in Temple, Texas, I entered a community that had been founded by medical professionals. And even at that time, the bulk of the congregation was doctor, nurse, therapist, somehow related to the medical profession and to the healing arts. And so, coming in to that parish, one of the things that I did is I looked at worship bulletins that they'd utilized over the previous year or so to get a feel for the flavor of their worship, not to impose my own notion, but to see how they did things at St. Francis. And the selection of bulletins I was given for Sunday mornings all contain healing prayers and laying on of hands for healing. So I got there, asked a few questions, and I thought this is perfect. This is a place with medical and healing types. Of course, we should be doing healing prayers. So I was very excited about that. Um, it didn't take long to find out that there were two things. One is people loved it, and that there were people within the community who would come to St. Francis because we were the only church of any kind in town that had healing prayers every time we gathered for worship. Sunday mornings or weekday gatherings always had healing prayers. I also found out that they had done the healing prayers on a seasonal basis, and I've been given the bulletins from that one season. It wasn't a part of their everyday, every time they worshiped character, but it became that while I was there. And what I learned in that, had it more deeply embedded within me, is that reconciliation and healing are part and parcel of everything that we do as Christians. And whether that's in a formal rite or formal prayers, or whether it's just in the language we use with one another, that it's critical that we're attentive to that. In the case of Wyoming, this is a diocese who's gone through some trauma, some deep trauma, some broken relationships, some misunderstandings, and um, a lack of transparency from the wider church on what has happened. And so I think that brings us together in a moment where the experiences that I've had and the values that I hold around healing and reconciliation can be utilized in every interaction that we have. Let me just simplify that a bit, because healing and reconciliation in the church can really be lifted up to a place of high theological notions and abstract kinds of ideas. They can also be reduced to regular sacramental acts or to certain words and formula. I'd like to step back from that and say that all of that is good, and those are tools that we can utilize within the church. But at the heart of it, healing and reconciliation is people and groups getting together, getting to know one another, listening to each other, and discovering for the first time and discovering again who we all are. I get to know who you are. You get to know who I am. We can scratch our heads and wonder why we're the way we are, why we feel the way we do, or speak in the way that we do. And with an atmosphere of healing and reconciliation, we're continually driven to, to be curious and to express our curiosity by listening, by asking gentle questions of clarification. And in the words attributed to St. Francis, to not so much seek to be understood as to understand. If I try to be understood, I'm trying to force myself on you. If I try to understand, I'm listening to you and checking things out. And it's through that dance of understanding, of consoling, of healing, that we can be more fully the people that God has called us to be. At, at the heart of my spirituality really is a confluence of three things. One is the Psalter. For all of my adult life, I have regularly gone to the Psalms, sometimes in a very disciplined way, starting with the first Psalm and saying two or three or four, and then moving on, and the next day picking up some more. And sometimes just opening the Book of Common Prayer to the Psalter and starting to read, randomly selecting. Because what I find in that is the Psalter captures the cry of people who yearn for closeness with one another and a closeness to their God, whether that is in an understanding of the Old Testament God or a New Testament God, because they're both the same. Whether it's who we access through the one that we attribute as Jesus in the Psalms, or if it's just those people who are saying, why, oh God, why is this happening to me? It's a place that feeds me and calms me and helps me to be in that position of listening and understanding what God has to say and what um, the folks in my community have to say. So there's the Psalter. Another bit of my spirituality comes in is it's Benedictine, following uh, not rigidly following the rule of Saint Benedict, but seeing it as aspirational, but in particular, looking at what Benedict has to say about three values: and that is stability, obedience, and fidelity. Stability, obedience, and fidelity. Stability, in the purest sense from Benedict, is about rooting yourself in a place. Now, I'm being invited to root myself in Wyoming, which means I uproot part of myself from Michigan, where I currently live and have for about the last quarter of a century. So a strict Benedictine would probably scratch his or her head and wonder, how can you uproot and be rooted? For me, it's about coming in and occupying the land with you, uh, becoming one with you in Wyoming, to understand who you are and how we can be together. So I've got to learn about how the winds blow and how the winds seemingly don't cease. I've got to learn about mountains that are between point A and point B, rather than just some hills or flatlands like I experience in Michigan, but to root myself with you. Um, that's that stability that's needed. The fidelity is to be faithful to who I am, to be faithful to who you are, and together for us to be faithful to God. And those practices are in the common everyday conversations, and also in our shared common prayer through the Book of Common Prayer and like resources. And then finally, obedience. Um, Obedience is about a disciplined life. It's about recognizing that we make vows of obedience, whether those are our baptismal vows or their vows as a deacon, a priest, a bishop, uh, vows as a Christian educator, uh, vows as a school administrator, uh, vows as a good neighbor. It's about being obedient to those core values of who we are and holding one another in discipline uh, to that continued obedience. So, how does that work out on a practical, everyday kind of way? Well, obedience for me means that if you think I'm doing something that I ought not be doing, hold me accountable. Talk to me about it. Let's let's work together through it. And I'll do the same with you, not in a spirit of judgment or a spirit of retribution, but rather in the spirit of understanding, of being faithful to the vows that we've taken, uh, and to root ourselves in stability and the community that we treasure, um, the diocese and the people of Wyoming. Thank you.